our presentation here on what's new and next for the Power Platform. This is actually a rerun of a session we ran last week, and unfortunately we ran into some technical difficulties about midway through. So we went ahead and rescheduled. So those of you that are rejoining from last week, thank you for your patience and for joining us again. We also have, I believe, some new attendees. We'd like to welcome you as well. Thank you for joining. And what we'd like to do here is start from the beginning again for those who have joined this week that weren't with us last week. So we apologize for those that you've seen this before from last week. But we'll quickly get through the introductory slides and move on to the demos, which I'm sure everyone really wants to see. So just from a logistics perspective, just a reminder that the session is recorded. And assuming we get through things successfully today, Michelle will be sending out the recorded link to everyone, all the participants, for follow-up. And then please do enter your questions in the chat window during the presentation, and we will review those at the end when we move into Q&A. Would also like to introduce our presenters. James Casey, Senior Consultant with Covenant Technology Partners, Rachel Palia, also a Senior Consultant, and Pamela Bestie, Manager with Covenant as well. And they'll all be presenting different aspects of the Power Platform with examples of things that we've done. So we'll set the stage here with regards to why what we're showing you today is something important, something you might be interested in, actually looking at what's happening now and going forward. So what we're seeing is a surging digital demand. And again, nothing new here because this has been going on for decades, but it seems to continue to accelerate at faster and faster rates. Just some different statistics here. And again, these are from Microsoft, but 500 million more apps will be created in the next 5 years than in the last 40 years. So quite an uptick there in terms of new apps. And then 50% of the digital work can be automated with current technology. So the idea here is that we're not having to wait for some new technology panacea to allow us to really effectively and impactfully digitize the work that we're doing or automate the work that we're doing today. The technology is actually here today. So there is a lot of pent-up demand and opportunity here. Additionally, and that was on the demand side. Now on the supply side, of course, we have similar challenges around developer capacity. And so predictions are that we'll have a 1 million developer shortfall, as well as 86% of companies struggle to hire tech talent. So clearly on the supply side, not enough people can actually be involved in writing the application to support the surging demand. So this gap here is exacerbated by the recent COVID lockdown that we've been through here, in that a high percentage of employees are working remotely, as well as challenges around contraction in global GDP. So that's obviously resulting in cost pressures and so forth, or cost controls, as I think global organizations are looking at how they need to turn and become more profitable, given the challenges that they're just coming through here with COVID. So the answer is not to try to go and teach everyone to code. There's just simply not enough time and clearly not enough interest out there in trying to meet the supply problem by training people to code, at least traditional coding as we know it, right? However, one can theoretically look at turning everyone into a developer with a low code approach. So the idea here behind low code is, rather than individuals writing lines of code, which have to be tested and debugged and evaluated and architected and all these kinds of things, using more of a component approach. One can take higher level components and higher level tools to ideally come up with a very robust and capable solution with a much faster time to market, much lower risk, and much lower resource need to build those applications. And so that's the idea with low code. So low code empowers every dev to go faster. So, we focused on the idea of not trying to teach everyone to code, and that definitely supports the first user persona shown here, business users, right? These are also known as citizen developers. These are your power users, they're business users. They typically know the business problem. They're not coders, but given the right sets of tools, they're the ones that can probably get in and maybe solve a number of these issues in terms of developing applications very, very quickly. For these other categories, IT admins and pro developers, while they may be more technical, and in fact the pro developers can actually code, what the low code tools do is it makes them more efficient. So the idea is that they can actually do more with less. So corporate America, I should say worldwide, corporations are embracing the Power Platform here. Given these numbers from Microsoft, as you can see, 86% of Fortune 500 companies use Power Apps, 90% or 97% use the Power Platform, which of course includes Power Apps, but also includes Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents. And of course, Power BI is theoretically in the Power Platform as well. So high adoption here. And this, of course, is what we're going to be focusing on today. The real kind of turn here that's happened since late last year is Microsoft's integration of the Power Platform with Teams. Now, Microsoft has always been a huge proponent of Teams and has been very interested in achieving high adoption rates within corporate America. And they've actually been able to do that due to the COVID crisis and the lockdown. So there's been a very, very high adoption curve that's happened around Teams, specifically in the area of meetings, for example, and communications, chat and phone and voice and these kinds of things, right? However, what Microsoft would like to see or like to promote is the idea of using Teams as a first order application platform as well. So the idea is that Teams is not just about collaborating on documents or having meetings or chatting or communicating, but it also is the place, the first order location that users go to run their apps. So what Microsoft have done is they have taken the Power Platform, which was not necessarily tightly integrated with Teams, and they've integrated it tightly with Teams. Not that you can't continue to run it in an enterprise fashion, but what we're promoting here is, and what's new with Microsoft is they're promoting of these tools now, or this tooling within the Teams environment. So as you can see, the full platform, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and PVA now are now available as apps that can be downloaded within Teams and loaded into your environment. Additionally, Microsoft has also taken Dataverse, which is formerly known as CDS, and they have integrated a kind of a slimmed down or scaled down version of Dataverse to be available in Teams. So I don't know, some of you may have heard of the code name Oakdale or Project Oakdale within Microsoft. This was essentially the move to get Dataverse for Teams as well as Power Apps for Teams. And so what you essentially get with Dataverse is you get a full relational database now that's available from within Teams, and you're not having to pay a premium or extra cost license in order to use that technology. It now becomes part of your Teams license. So this can offer some highly robust and highly capable options for you as you're building out your applications. So as we said, low code, no code not only enables non-developers or no developers, if you will, but also helps pro developers become more efficient. And so as we look at the full stack from a Microsoft perspective here, you can see that top layer, the Power Platform layer, is focused on the low code, every developer, or maybe citizen developer, if you will. And then that gets combined with the pro developer layers around Azure services and the Azure data services. So, one can look at it in two ways. One is that not only can business users, be more productive in helping to close that application gap from a demand side because they can use low-code tools. It also allows the professional developer to really focus in on the backside of the applications, building API layers and configuring services in such a way that they can be more productive as well, providing the tooling that the citizen developers use and need every day to be able to build their applications faster. Additionally, Microsoft has recently made available tenant-wide analytics around the Power Platform so that you can get telemetry into how the Power Apps are being used within your tenant. Again, this is good because it allows you to see, who's using what applications, as well as allows you to focus in on determining what your licensing patterns are as well. So as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft is really enthusiastically promoting Teams and the Power Platform by including both Dataverse as well as the Azure API Management connector for the Power Platform. They're including both in the Teams license, which means if you're running Teams, you are able to use these components or these connectors, if you will, without additional licensing. This is really big news because as many of you know, in order to do really anything outside of the Office 365 platform on the Power Platform, you've had to typically purchase an additional either per user or per app premium license. And so this allows you to really do a lot without paying for those premium connectors. I'll also put a plug in for an upcoming webinar here on Viva Connections. I'll be leading a series on the new announcement around Microsoft Viva and what that means for Teams and for SharePoint as well. That's pretty exciting. Just have a list of some references here, which will be included in the deck that gets sent out for your own, further research. And with that, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter.
Thanks, Kurt. So before I get into the demo, again, I'm James Casey, Senior Consultant with Covenant Technology Partners. The app that I'm going to highlight shows solving a business problem where an organization was using a green screen application that was built in the late 80s, early 90s, writing back to a SQL database, and they wanted something that was mobile first, with the ability to eventually allow their employees to punch in and punch out via mobile application, but right now locked down to just be able to be used while they're inside of their organization. So we help them solve a few problems there. And what we've done is we created a series of SharePoint lists that allow you to write back employee time entries for a day, capture every time they log in, every time they log out, and then create a daily summary of each of their logins and logs out for the total time that they spent working for the day, what their first time logged in was, what their final time was logged out. And then that allowed for reporting to come on the back end using at the base level a SharePoint list, but we've explored using Power Query through both Excel and Power BI so that they're able to automate some additional reporting outside of the SharePoint and Microsoft 365 cloud environment. So we were able to quickly automate everything. So from the time that you punch in to the time that you punch out, all of the stuff that happens in the back end, there's no manual manipulation. We're setting weekly pay periods every 2 weeks and going in and logging people out of the system every day at midnight and then running the summary reports at 3 a.m. So that there's no interference with anybody logging in or logging out for the previous workday. It solved their problem, it met their needs, and we were able to get it implemented, I think, from start to finish in just about 4 weeks. Had a few little tweaks here and there, but it was a pretty quick solution to implement. So if somebody can confirm that they can see my screen before I start demoing.
I can see it.
Okay, fantastic. So the first user experience that they get is we did customize it a little bit. I'm refreshing the app to let them know that, hey, we recognize who you are as an end user. We're letting the background data load and getting the app up and functioning. And what you'll see on this home screen is that we have a start time, all time entries, a summary table, and then an in and an out without any specific information. That's underneath that because we don't have any time entries for today because I just haven't started working for the day or the week yet. So when I hit start time, what that does is it takes the local time based off of the Office 365 environment. It's not something the end user can control, which was a huge requirement for them. They did not want any kind of weird local time manipulation out of the application, and that's understandable. So what this does is it takes the system time on the back end and writes that back to the SharePoint list, so we don't have to worry about any end users doing any adjusting of their time entries by adjusting the local stuff. So you notice the first thing that popped up that changed on the screen is we're actually showing based on their time entry how much time is accrued. So every 30 seconds, the data is reloading in the background and it shows how much time they've accrued in their current punch in. So you'll notice that we started our time at 10:17 a.m. It's now 10:18 a.m. and we've got a 1 minute increment. You'll notice that I don't have any time accrued for today and I don't have any time accrued for the week yet. However, I do have 35 hours and 41 minutes that I accrued as part of this pay period. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. So with all time entries, I can actually see the five days in the first week of the pay period. It could be all 7 days, but I only have 5 Monday through Friday work days. Shows the start time where I punched in, the time where I punched out, the total amount of minutes that I worked for that day. That was a requirement of theirs. And then it shows the total hours that I spent during that pay period working. And then from the home screen, when I'm ready to punch out for the day, I just click end time. And it will run through the same process of writing back to the SharePoint list. And we now have no active time entry. It does take a little bit for the flows to run in the background, which is why we have the data reloading every 30 seconds in the background. We can force a refresh, but it will, by the time the flow run ends, we will have an in and an out and a total for the day. And then we'll have a total amount that we've accrued for the day. And then as part of our weekly time entries as well. So looking at the SharePoint lists, again, we wanted to provide a cloud first solution. So on a summary side, this shows the amount of time that an employee has worked in the previous week, and then using some basic SharePoint formatting logic, which you can do with SharePoint, is if it's under 8 hours, we give it a red. If it's over 9 hours, because most employees are a 9 to 5, 8-hour workday employee, showing if they accrued too much or too little time, shows when they punched in, when they punched out, and then the day and then the week that it's on. So simply with this, with SharePoint list or view formatting, we can create summary lists here for people to review, or we can export directly to Excel or retrieve and extract from Power BI. And then we do capture all of the daily time records. Just refreshing this to show my new 2-minute time entry. So you'll see that it is showing up here now. So if I refresh my app data, it's now showing up that I've accrued 2 minutes of work today, 2 minutes of work in the week, and then it's showing all of my time entries that I've punched in and out for the workday. So very, very lightweight application. Again, it can be used on a desktop. This is designed to be working from a cell phone or a tablet, so that they can punch in and punch out whenever. And this is all 100% included with the standard Microsoft Enterprise or SMB licenses that are available. There is no additional cost for the usage of Power Automate or Power Apps with this. And yeah, I don't have anything else. So if there are any questions, I think we're going to wait till the end, but please feel free to ask them in chat, and we'll get you an answer.
Thank you, James.
Hi, I'm Pamela Bestie. I'm a manager here at Covenant. I'm also the solution lead for our Dynamics 365 customer engagement. The app I'm going to show you today, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera again. Just wanted to say hi. I'm going to show is a really simple one that I did. We had a client who they had users who in their company that are not Dynamics users. So they wanted to be able to allow those people to provide leads for their sales team. The way we were going to do this, since everybody usually has a SharePoint license, the way I did this is I set up a SharePoint list in SharePoint, and I captured the fields that they wanted to capture for that lead, and then created a really simple Canvas app, Power App. Then I'm using a Power Automate in the background to feed it into Dynamics. So the first thing I'm showing you here is, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. The first thing I'm showing here is the SharePoint list, and this has all the fields that we're capturing for the lead. I have a couple more fields I'll address in a second. And then I created from this list, I created my Power App. When you create a Power App from an existing data source, the gallery, which this is the gallery, the edit form, and the create new area all pretty much get created for you. This gallery, I made a couple changes. So because I did that, I mean, this really took less than 20 minutes. So just getting my SharePoint list together, very simple out of the box. So what I'm allowing the user to do here is they can go to this app through a browser or through their mobile app and click to create new. I'm going to go ahead and create new sales lead. Mouse. I use lots of different ones. I have a Marvel universe usually in all my stuff. So we're going to do 800. And then once they're ready, if they don't want to fill in all the detail, they don't have to, they can go ahead and click submit. So now I can see my new Mickey Mouse lead is here in my gallery. I can click through to edit that if I wanted to. And I'll show you what I did with that. And then I can also see he shows up here in my SharePoint list right away because this was my data source. So once you enter the data in your app, it goes right into your SharePoint list. But now I want it to feed into my Dynamics. So right now I've got a Power Automate that on create of that record in the SharePoint list, it's going out and creating this brand new lead in Dynamics. I need to refresh a couple of times because it does take a little time. It's asynchronous in the background. Let's refresh, and there's my Mickey Mouse. Now I don't have any other data for this Mickey Mouse. That user who created this doesn't see that data in Dynamics because they don't have access. But if they wanted to, say they first talked to Mickey Mouse and the first time they talked to him, they forgot to get the address. Well, they want to go back in and add the address. They can click through his record, click on edit, and let's scroll down and enter the address. And that's 91521. Now, what I did for this is I created, and I didn't have to do a separate Power Automate, but I created a second Power Automate that on change of this record in SharePoint, what I did is I added 2 new fields, synced to Dynamics and lead ID. So I went back to my original Power Automate, updated it. So after I create the lead record, I'm doing an update step to update this record to change the sync to Dynamics to yes or true, and then grab the lead ID from that lead record I just created. So now on my second Power Automate for my change, what I'm doing is I'm first saying, okay, if lead ID contains data, then I'm going to go out, look for that lead in Dynamics and make that change. So now that we have that address, I just do another refresh and we should see that refresh, the address show up here. And there's our change. So real simple way to get data into your Dynamics or into any other system, doing a quick Power Automate using SharePoint and a SharePoint list. And it really took, I mean, you could get really deep and involved. I could change this that when it qualifies that I go in and I update the record in the gallery so that those users can see that the record is qualified. You can get really detailed, but this was a real quick, easy sample that I did. And on to you, Rachel.
Hi, I'll introduce myself as well. Rachel Pelia, Senior Consultants, and I'll turn my camera off now. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this first application we built for a client that I wanted something that their field personnel could use to kind of reference different parts, so they can have their internal IDs and cross-reference and find the OEM part number so that they could order more parts. This was also a legacy application, so we tried to build it so it looked similar so that when we rolled it out, the field was kind of used to the look and feel of it already. So I created some dummy data here, so I put some tools because it's springtime, so I thought it was appropriate. So if you see here, for example, we have, a lawnmower, and the idea is that they can search here on the left. So I'll search, for example. So if I search for ABC for make, you can see I have 2 different results returned. We also added up here so that they could have a count. There's a clear filter option, so you can do searches on different parameters. So if I wanted to also search for a description, I put wood, so you can see now I have 1 record returned. They also wanted the ability to have training videos. So if an employee was in the field and they were searching for trying to fix a particular part and they wanted some kind of reference, they had a video library. So you can, same idea, do partial word searches. And then they could launch the video from within the application, or they could open it in a new tab, which would launch a YouTube page. So this particular one is built in Dataverse for Teams. So it gave them the option to have up to 2 gigabytes of data. That could be, they estimate about 1 million records. This particular client had about 7,000 rows. So it allows them to hold a substantial amount of data. All right, I'm going to switch over to the onboarding tool. Power Apps has been having some issues this morning, so let's hope it loads.
Yeah, you guys can't catch a break. Either Teams is having trouble or Power Apps is having trouble.
I checked this morning and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our onboarding tool. So for this one, the client wanted something where they could easily schedule meetings for new employees. So they have a internal process that when a new employee is onboarded, they have about 12 standard meetings that they schedule. And they wanted a tool to kind of just make that more efficient for the HR persons, because if they have, 5 employees onboarding in a week and each employee has about 12 meetings, that's 60 meetings that particular person is scheduling. So we wanted to create something that would save them some time. So I'm just going to show you my calendar real quick so you can kind of see it's pretty empty. So here, this is connected to the Active Directory, so they can search for an employee. And here's where they select that employee's start date. So all of the meetings are calculated based off of this field. So the data source for this is there's 2 SharePoint lists. One that holds all of the information for the stock meetings that they schedule. So they have the ability to go in and edit and change that at any time. And then the other one is an audit list that once this is run, it'll write information over. So you can see here, the number of meetings is 12, and then it defaults with all of the meeting information. So subject, body, date, which are all calculated fields based off of that start date, but they have the ability to edit or change anything. So let's say we want to change this particular one to next week. They have the ability to change the meeting duration and the time. So let's change this one to 9. It also tells you what day of the week it is. So let's say Joe Schmo is out on Tuesday. You have the ability to change that and kind of have a quick view. Add some too. I'll only put my name so I don't schedule a bunch of meetings for people. Down here, it also shows a concatenated list of the 2 fields because when you add multiple people, it defaults to the number of items. So we wanted to give them like a quick view. So in the source list too, they have the ability to add attachments so that it'll automatically be included in the meeting, but we wanted to give them the option to add additional attachments. So with this little toggle button here, they can turn this on and off. And here they can name the link and then add the link here, and it'll be a hyperlink in the meeting invite. So we'll turn it off for now. And then over here, you have the ability to remove meetings. So let's say this one's not necessary. We can remove some, and then we have particular employee needs to have extra meetings. You have the ability to add blank ones here at the bottom. And then you can see here the number of meetings updates as we add and remove some. So I'm just going to remove some so we don't schedule 12. I want to demonstrate how it does. So you can see here that once I added a person for this last meeting, this button was enabled. So the idea being that those are required fields and the button is only enabled when everything is entered. So here, again, just flash over to my calendar. You can see there's nothing in there. And then once I send all the invites, I should be able to, or I expect to see 3 meetings. So it's running. So what it's doing in the back end is it's writing this information over to our audit SharePoint list. And then there's a Power Automate flow in the background that creates all of the meeting invites. So you can see here, pop over to my calendar. I have my meetings that's scheduled now. So I have my subject and then our links. So this one was built in Power Apps, so you have the ability to add it anywhere. You can embed it in a Teams tab or on a SharePoint page, whereas the other one, our tool finder, was a Dataverse for Teams, so it's kind of limited to that channel, but it has a lot of data storage options. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Kurt.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I think what we want to do is move on to Q&A. Michelle, you still with us?
I am here. Yes.
All right, great, great. Do you have a list of questions coming through chat that we'd like to cover?
There's been a few from Rob. James responded, I believe. And then Rob had one question. Rob, do you want to ask it or do you want me to go ahead and ask it?
Go ahead. That way I can mock you if you don't get it right. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Question for all the presenters. How much did you use prototyping versus traditional design mockups within Word doc or other design tools? If you used prototyping, how much time, level of effort do you think you saved with this design build technique?
So I can go ahead and start with an answer there, if that's okay. I generally try not to do a whole lot of designing screens, designing aspects. It's really about connecting directly to the data and then starting to run with it. If we have a working data source, that's the, like, for me, an ideal scenario, because we have something that already will model the app for us. If we're starting from a new data source, then we have to go, or new data source or a new data table, we have to go and set that up first, maybe put some test data in there to filter in through the app. But I would say that using more of a joint application development session, or using more of that design, build, live, demo, getting the core functionality in place and then tweaking the aesthetics of it, the UI and the UX of it, is a much faster deployment model, as long as we understand what the outcomes of the app are supposed to be. Changing a box, a square to a circle or red to yellow is pretty easy and simple to do. But it's I would say that from other application development lifecycle processes, that this tends to be a little bit quicker, because we're able to build on the fly. That app that I built for the client, the time entry app, we had a functioning prototype inside of an hour-long meeting. It wasn't perfect, but we had the core functionality there, and then started tweaking some of the internal app reporting and things that we were looking at. So I'd say it was a much faster development cycle from start to functioning prototype.
Excellent, thank you.
And for doing some of the Power Apps, especially if you're moving into a Dynamics, or you have another Power Platform model-driven app, the key is to always use a sandbox first. So like for mine, I did mine in a sandbox environment. If I were going to move it to a production, I could keep using that same SharePoint list that I created. I could keep using that same Power App, because it's looking at that SharePoint, but then redirect my Power Automates to go to the correct solution in the correct environment. And then if you do need to storyboard it or figure it out, you could do a quick video to get the confirmation from your client, but or your end users. But like I said, for mine really took, even when I went back and went in and said, I'm going to make an update to it, it took less than 2 hours tops. And I'm saying 2 hours because I'm a perfectionist, and I go back in and I'm like, well, I want it to do this now too. But you can get really detailed, especially if you're going to go do your Power Automate. You can get really detailed, and it can involve some programming and stuff. Not a lot of code, but you could get really detailed on some of this stuff.
Yeah, the way I'm interpreting the question is, for my personal preferences, is I like to do mock-ups just to kind of facilitate those conversations with the client, so that they get a sense of like what it'll actually look like. And it's easier to have those conversations up front instead of building something and then looking at it and then they're like, no, I wanted it over here. So in terms of design, I like to do a quick mock-up, nothing that takes more than 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, I would just say, thanks for the question, Rob. Just kind of overarching. I mean, the tool does support an agile approach, and given the target on the citizen developer types, that persona, typically those folks aren't going to sit down and do a wireframe, right?
Right.
They're just going to start coding, right?
Yeah.
Now, since we as a Microsoft partner and consultant, we don't really kind of fall into citizen developer. We really kind of fall into more of the pro developer category. We'll tend to use maybe some more formal tools, especially if the complexity of the solution requires it. And this kind of goes to Rachel's point, rather than spending a whole bunch of time, doing the, AB, ABC, ABCD kind of a thing, which you could do. Sometimes it's simpler to just use something like a wireframing tool, quickly mock something up, and again, especially if you've got a number of stakeholders to get something approved through, right? Do that first. Then you can quickly translate that into something in the Power Platform, and then from there you can spin or spiral pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, Kurt, as you're looking at doing these projects, do you change your estimating with using Power Apps? When customers are asking, because the question always, right, is how much will it take for you to do this, right? And I was curious if you're able to adjust that by using these tools versus what you use traditionally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are able to now. What we're finding, Rob, and everyone here participating, is it's very, very important at the outset to understand, not only the business requirements for the app, but also the licensing / technical requirements. So as we all know, the cloud platforms being what they are, there's no such thing as a free lunch, typically, right?
Right.
You're going to pay something somewhere. And so we find that we need at the outset to provide some good guidance on, is it wise to use a SQL connector as an example? I'm not saying using a SQL connector is a bad thing, but the project budget, the subscription model, the client, and their kind of orientation towards, month to month per user per month, these kinds of things needs to be evaluated, because what we don't want to do is go down a particular route, making assumptions, and then find out that the client can't afford the solution, not so much from the services perspective, right? Because the service, to your point, Rob, I mean, you can develop these things at a fraction of what it would cost to develop it using custom development tools.
Yeah.
But what they find is over the lifetime of the app, because of the subscription costs, they can't afford it, see?
Right.
And so it's important for us to get to maneuver those subscription questions up front, so that we don't, get them on the horns of a dilemma at some point. And they go, well, gee, we can't use this solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would be challenging for a citizen developer as well, right? That they would need to have some knowledge of that.
Well, you're right. And what we have seen with clients, and perhaps this is less so with citizen developers, but definitely with the IT pros and the dev pros, when they get in, they tend to want to immediately use, the SQL connector, for example. And so, we'll find as clients have implemented 3, 4, 5, 6 different solutions because their devs have kind of done it that way, and all of a sudden they see their subscription costs go up significantly, and then we get the call and say, "Hey, we got a problem here." So in that case, the connectors become something like an entree drug, right? I mean, you kind of get stuck on it. So then we have to help them reevaluate that. Now, as I mentioned in my part of the presentation, this API management connector can offer some good relief, perhaps, in that category in terms of avoiding some of the connector costs. Now, you got to understand that it does have some constraints around it. One is that you need to implement Power Platform in Teams, which is not necessarily a constraint, but you got to keep that in mind. The other thing is that there will be some services costs involved, right? Because you're going to have a dev pro write the services, or a consultant like us to write the services. There'll also be some Azure consumption, but if your interest is in paying up front, so I don't have to pay the long tail on the the per user per month thing,
right,
that may be worth the investment.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are all the questions in the chat, Kurt.
Okay, great. Well, Michelle, you want to move on to sort of the offer and closeout here?
Sure. Let me share my screen. All right. So as our next steps, and to keep conversation going with all of you, we have 2 complimentary offerings. One is a lunch and learn on site or over Teams, just for a deeper dive around the Power Platform or any specific demo you saw today. And we are also offering a Power Apps in a Day workshop. So I will be sending out a follow-up email. So if you have any questions about these offerings or would like to schedule one, just please let me know. And then lastly, we have a couple upcoming events. If you follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website, you can always be updated with our events and you can register from there. And again, these will be in my follow-up email if you are interested in either of these events. And with that, thank you for attending. Kurt, do you have anything else?
I don't, just we very much appreciate your participation and would love to have any further conversations with any of you on this subject. Thanks again and have a great day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your guys'
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.